Okay guys, what I have here is a simple sequence, and right now I'm using that. I'm using a sawtooth. This is 4 oscillators on the left and 4 oscillators on the right. That's just the release on the envelope, so I'm just pulling the release back a bit. Let's go up an octave. Okay. Here we have, guys, the exact same sequence again. This time I'm using the triangle wave. I'm just going to bring it up an octave now. Add a little bit of release on that. Slow down the gate on the clock. Okay, what I have here now is a very simple patch. Just 2 oscillators on the left, 2 oscillators on the right. I'll have to release a bit. Okay. Okay, just basic stuff. I think what we'll go through next is we will go through the waveforms on one oscillator. We can do that next. And you can then compare it to my ARP 2500 video that I did. I can't stress enough the 184 keyboard if you have anything modular. Again, 4 CV, 4 gate, all in one synth. I know there's some modern things that do that as well. I think the Arturia BeatStep does that. But again, I like vintage stuff. So let's go for the waveforms on the oscillator. So here's the sine wave. Okay, and then here you have the octave switches. So you have, they do it by frequency, but you have low, 125 hertz, 250, 500, 1K. Then they also have a tune knob here. Right, so you can do that. That's calibrated to 10 octaves. From here to here is 10 octave, or you have 2 octave range. And also on the Toto, like I've said before, they've modified that, and they've added a fine-tune knob, which is very handy when you're in the 10 octave range. Okay, so that's the sine wave. Let's hear the triangle. Okay, sawtooth. then we'll listen to the pulse. Okay, this is pulse width. This is manually doing it. Also here you have pulse width modulation from an external source, and then these are your frequency controls. So this controls your CV. So if you, again, you plug in your sequencer that, you'd plug that in here. I have this using because that's for another setup example I'm doing for you guys. So that basically is the VCO in a nutshell. And obviously I wanted to use this one so you guys can hear a little bit of history. Oh, sorry, I have a little fluff there. Okay, guys, so what I want to do now is, like I mentioned, let's go through some modules. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run just some CV. So what my plan is to do, the sequencer controlling one VCO. Again, we'll use the Toto VCO. I'm going to have some using a pulse wave. And then the pulse, we're going to do some pulse width modulation using the LFO module, which is one of the rare modules here. And that we're then going to go into my low pass filter, then just out to the VCA. So let's focus on listening to the sound of the LFO and the low pass filter. So to start, what we're going to do is I'm just going to push in my clock. Unfortunately, the sequencer does not have a start stop button, so the sequencer is always running. It is what it is. So the best way is you can just put your clock in. Okay. This is our CV from the sequencer coming into the VCO. So the output of the VCO is coming into the filter. So if I pull that, so this is the output of the VCO going into the filter. Okay. The output of the filter here is going to the VCA. So if I pull that out again, the sound will stop. Okay. So let's manually just sweep the filter. This is a low pass filter. Okay. And then we can do some resonance. Sorry, a bit scratchy my pods. Okay. All right. So now what I'd like to do is I would like to start. So let's do some pulse width modulation. All right. Now we're going to do some pulse width modulation. So here I'm using the LFO. Okay. We're doing this sine wave. So out of the LFO, I'm going to a mixer, and I have that switched off, and then I have my output here. Okay, so this output is going to the pulse width in on the VCO. So if I turn that on, okay, now you can hear we have some pulse width modulation going on. So this is our pulse width. This is our LFO. So the LFO, I can do the, okay. So this is the frequency of the LFO. Now I'm going to go to the low pass filter. Okay. Okay, so now what I want to do, guys, is let's do some modulation on the frequency. Okay? So I'm going to send some CV from my dual sequencer row. So here's my dual sequencer row here, okay? And I'm going to take this output here, and this output here is going to plug into the frequency input. So control input on the frequency. Okay, now if I turn down my frequency on the LFO, you're going to start, actually, let's go to the row. Let's make everything flat on the row. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start turning up some stuff. You start hearing some accents. Okay, and that is just sending CV to control the frequency amount. Okay. Now we can do the same thing on row number 2, and we can do that for the resonance. Now let's move these outputs over to the bandpass. Okay. Is this the bandpass filter? So let's put the frequency into the frequency. Okay. And here we're going to use, let's do the okay. What I'm doing now is I'm just going through this dual sequencer row, and I'm just turning some knobs here. Create some neat little. Okay. Again, this is just to get you guys to hear somehow the modules sound. We can move this over to resonance now. Okay. Let's turn up the bandwidth. Okay. All I'm doing there is turning up the frequency on the actual VCO itself. So literally, I want to show you guys something now. Okay? I have no input going into the bandpass now. So what you're hearing now is literally the bandpass self-oscillating. Okay? So if I turn the resonance down, this sound will go away. Okay? Because you can see I have no input now. And yes, this is a dual concentric pot. All of it, this is just overdriving the bandpass filter with the resonance. Now I'll show you a trick I use with the phase shifter. The phase shifter I love to use. It makes a killer 808 kick drum sound, like really ridiculous. I don't know why the phase shifter, I don't know, I just happened to try it one day with that and it was just amazing. Okay. Now all I did there is just played with my dual sequencer row, just sending more CV out of the different steps. You can start creating these nice little melodies. All right, so let's move on to a different module now. So now you've heard basically what the LFO is kind of doing. We've listened to the low pass filter. We quickly went over the band pass. High pass, again, is the same as the low pass, basically. Okay, let's look at the format filter. So what I'm doing is, again, just running a sequence out of the one VCO. We'll just, for all the testing, we'll just use the Toto VCO. Why not? Let's have some fun today. All right, so the format filter, it's basically a 3-band EQ. You have band number 1, 2, and 3. So each band has a frequency range, a Q, and a level. Okay, so let's listen to band number 3. So I can sweep the band. That range is 1K to 4K. Okay. Here's my Q. Okay. Let's turn that band off. Let's do band number 2. So that's 250 to 1K. I'll sweep that. Okay. And let's turn that off. Sorry, my spots are scratchy. And let's just do the lower, so 60. Not a lot of information there. So here we have all the bands on. And again, from the VCO, we're running a pulse wave with a little bit of LFO modulating the pulse width. Okay. Sorry, some of my pots are a bit scratchy. That's the level. Level. Okay. It'd be great if this had CV points on each one, so you can control the frequency and the format at the same time. And the cue of the format, I mean, sorry. Okay, beautiful. Really nice sounding. Really brings out those harmonics. There's a bit of like a sizzle in there, which I really like that. Now we can go to the sawtooth. So all I'm doing here is I'm sweeping the frequency from 1K to 4K with Q on full. Okay. Do the 250 to 1K. Sorry, that pot's a bit scratchy. All right, so that's basically the format filter. Very nice addition to the Polyfusion setup, obviously. Okay, so what we have here is the parametric EQ. You have an input level. Go into a mixer just to attenuate the volume a bit, and then from that mixer we're going into the EQ, and from the out of the EQ we're going right to the VCA. Again, sound is being controlled by the analog sequencer. So what we have is a 5-band EQ. Each band you can either cut or boost. So these are the frequencies on the top. So you have, and then below that you have the Q and then the level. So let's do the 2 to 20 kilohertz. let's just turn up the level on that. Just going to sweep the cue. Okay. Let me turn the level down. I had that on boost right now. Now we have a cut. So we're cutting the same. One's a boost, one's a cut. Go back to boost. There you go. So that's basically a very, very quick overview of the Parametric EQ. Very nice sounding. And having the cue obviously is very, very nice. Okay, so let's stop the sequencer. So here's the phase shifter. And this is how I create 808 drums. So for this, it's very, very simple. All I have is the resonance on full. So if I just turn that up, you'll hear. Okay. That is literally just a drone of the self-resonance of a resonating. See? So if you turn the resonance up full, it oscillates. Okay. Pretty cool. So to hear that, I just turned the VCA all the way up. So I'm going to turn the, all right. So now that we've heard the output of the, we'll call that droning or the self-oscillation of the phase shifter, what I have to do is now I want to apply an envelope. So what I do is I take the output of the phaser, the phase shifter or phaser. So the output goes into the VCA. Okay, the envelope is shaping the VCA to create that tail. Okay, so to create that decay. Now we need to find a way, how do we trigger the VCA to open? So if you don't want to use an external source like a clock, you can hit the manual button. So if I just hit the manual button, now as long as if I hold it open, press it down, you see the gate stays on and then it's wide open. Okay? So we can just hit the gate. Okay, so this here is the release. This is the length of our 808. So I can turn that down now. Okay. Okay, so the output of the envelope, that is feeding into the CV in on our VCA. This is what the dual VCA looks like. So there's two identical VCAs. This is VCA number 1. This is VCA number 2. So when you hear me in the video saying, 4 oscillators to the left, 4 oscillators to the right. So basically what I'm doing is I would use the top VCA as left, the bottom VCA as the right. Okay, since right now we're doing mono, so I'm only using one half of it. In my system, I have a total of 2 dual VCAs or 4 individual VCAs. Okay? So again, like I showed you before, if we take the control input out, we can turn up the level. Okay? and then you can just hear that droning sound. So this is directly out of the phase shifter. That's just the resonance self-oscillating, okay? It's a great thing, okay? So now if we turn that level, so this is the initial level. So the initial level, if you go this way, it's 0, okay? So now if we want, since we have our level at 0, we want to now open up the VCA. So how do we do that, right? So we can do it this way. But I can't turn that knob to get in nicely, right? So what we use is we do CV in, right? In this case, what we have here is, this is the output of the envelope. Now, if we stick that into the input, watch what happens. That is a very rudimentary way to make something like an 808, we'll call it an 808 style kick drum. Again, we could use that to make toms. I think quickly, let's just do the dual ring modulator. So for the dual ring modulator work, again, this is a dual, so this is, we can call it stereo, I guess, if you want to call it in layman's terms. So all I've done here is I've literally taken 2 different oscillators, okay? Oscillator number 1, oscillator number 2. The output, okay, is literally, again, you can see a pattern. So the output is going just to a mixer as an attenuator. And from the mixer, I am then going direct to my VCA, VCA to the DAW. Okay? Very simple. I'm just playing around with the oscillators now. I am not slowing down the sequence. I am literally just changing the pits of one oscillator. And the release on the envelope is very short. I can raise the release. I'm going to turn the release down now. Okay, guys. So that's the ring mod. Again, this is a very rudimentary, but I'm just trying to let you hear it. Okay. Output, take the output out. Boink. Done. Okay, quickly, if you want to hear the, we can just do the noise generator. Now, again, so what you're hearing there is just basically clicking. All that is the VCA opening and closing. So that is the white noise. All you hear is the white noise I have plugged directly into the VCA through a mixer, and then I just have the envelope is just opening and closing. So again, we can do the same thing. Okay, you can start to hear some of those hi-hat sounds, eh? Okay, pink, let's do pink noise. A little darker. They call this infrared. Oh, you can't even hear that guy. So quickly, what we can do is let's go, I can go Okay, so here's quickly the octave divider. So you can put any audio signal in. So there's my, just again, VCO number 1. Okay, so that's a one for one relationship. If I go to 2, this should drop it down an octave. Pretty simple. Okay, 4 octaves down, 5 octaves down. You guys get the idea. Okay. And we're going to turn off the clock. So I think looking at everything, I think we pretty much covered all the modules that I own and or are installed currently. The only other modules that I did not do was the reverb, the LFO on the left-hand side, and then we have the quadrature oscillator on the right-hand side. Also in the video, I didn't talk about the quantizer, dual sample and hold. Pretty cool module. And I think that's about it then. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and have a good one. Thank you.